Hi, this is Jennifer McGuire with part 1 of week 2 of the Thinking Inking class, and this is on embossing powders. Today I'm going to show you some things you can do with embossing powders that don't involve stamps per se. So here are some cards that I did. Each one has a little different technique. First I'm going to start with layering up layers of embossing powder, and what you can do with this is create faux wax seals. It's kind of neat. Here in the center of this flower, you can see a flower impressed into that white circle. I'm going to show you how to do that. It's really fun to do. First of all, I've got white powder, embossing powder in this little tub. This is an embossing ink over here. It's called Big Embossy. It's from Ranger. It's got black embossing ink on one side and clear on the other. And this is just an example of embossing powder. I really like these Adirondack colors, but today I'm going to be just using white. And I like to keep the embossing powder that I use most in these little Tupperwares with a spoon because it makes it just easier to do. And then you need a really high quality rubber stamp like this one from Hero Arts, and then a punched circle. So I'm going to take this punched circle and press it directly onto the clear embossing ink. And then I'm actually just making a little handle, I call these little forks, to hold the circle while I do the embossing. It's better than tweezers because you don't mess up the image that you're trying to do. So see, you can, I'm just holding this inked up circle. So I just covered the whole circle with embossing ink, and now I'm going to shake on the first layer of white embossing powder. Now you can do this with any color. I just wanted to show you white today. This looks particularly good with silver because it looks like faux metal when you do this. But I'm going to go ahead and have a spoonful of powder ready for the next go. And right now I'm heating up that first layer of embossing powder. I don't know if you can tell there, but it's slowly melting and turning shiny. There, you can kind of see there, I think. Now I'm going to keep this really hot, and before I let it cool down, I'm going to go ahead and shake on another layer so that that hot powder holds on to the powder that I'm shaking on right now. So I have another spoonful ready for the next time. You could instead put a layer of clear embossing ink in between, like I've done here. I let it cool and put a layer of clear embossing ink in between, and then shake on another layer. It doesn't matter. You can either shake it on while it's hot or shake it on while you have a new layer of clear embossing ink. It's totally up to you, whatever works best. Now once I've put a ton of layers on here, I've done like 6 or 7 layers, maybe 8, just depends on what look you're going for. I'm going to take, it's going to end up looking kind of like a puddle that's resting on top of your circle. Now I'm going to go ahead and ink up my stamp, this wood rubber stamp, with clear embossing ink and just have it sitting there ready to go. Now I'm going to heat up this layer really well. Heat it up really well. That's all the white embossing powder on there until it's real soupy. You'll see it move, and then I'm going to gently lay the rubber stamp in there. And once it's cooled, you can peel it off. Now the reason I put the clear embossing ink on the flower stamp first is so that it doesn't get stuck in the embossing powder. So you can see the image there. Now sometimes I go back and hit it lightly with the heat gun just to smooth it out and get out any bubbles or anything that you might have. So here's the final result with that. And I thought I could show you about white embossing powder on colored paper. Here I've stamped with the embossing ink and then white heat embossed that image on yellow paper. Now you can see I'm going over with a darker color of distress ink over this, and look at how that white really pops out. What happens is that embossed image resists the ink that you're putting on top, so it really makes great impact. So this is something fun that you can do with white embossing powder and your distress inks. So there's the final result, just some bold colors. See, distress inks don't always have to be vintage looking. Now I thought I'd show you faux epoxy. This is done with UTEE, which is ultra thick embossing enamel, and Ranger also makes this. You can see that little circle there with the flower in it. That is done with this powder. You can see up close here. It looks like an epoxy, and actually the one I did has a button stuck in the middle. So first you start out with a die cut shape or a punch shape or a piece from a pattern paper or stamped image, whatever you want. And I'm going to make one of those little forks again to hold the piece so that I don't burn my fingers when I'm holding it. And I'm going to shake on some of this ultra thick embossing enamel. This is different than regular embossing powder only in that they're bigger powder crystals. So you'll see that in a minute here. I'm going to go ahead and ink up my little circle with the clear ink, just covering it completely. So you can kind of see it on there, it's wet. And you don't have to hurry too much with this because it stays wet for a while. Now you can look at these crystals or these little powders and you can see it's thicker, it's like sugar instead of the really fine powder that regular embossing powder is. And as I heat this, it will form a thick layer of clear embossing over the image. So you can see it really easy doing it here. It actually will do little, it looks like little raindrops with just one layer. You can see that there, and I love this look. It's fun to do, but for faux epoxy, I'm going to want to go ahead and put on more layers that it smooths out. So I'm going to heat it up so it's completely hot, just like I did before with the white powder. And I'm going to shake on another layer. And I'm just going to keep doing a few layers. I think I did 3 or 4 layers for this. Now here's the last layer. You can see how it bubbles up kind of like an epoxy. And then at the end, what I did is, while it was all still hot, I just pressed a button in the center, so the button becomes part of this epoxy, fake epoxy shape. It's really easy to do. It's just a fun way to snazz up some of your old embellishments. Now here's how to make your embellishments glossy with UTEE. Here I took this Hero Arts flower and this punched butterfly, and I made them shiny. Really easy to do. Just press, for the flower, just press it onto your embossing ink pad. You can see it's getting wet all over. Kind of changes the color. There we go. Now I'm going to make another little handle or fork for this. So it's just going to be there so I don't have to burn my fingers doing this. And you can do this with any of your embellishments. Really, the sky's the limit with what you emboss. So there you can see I've put a thick layer of UTEE on here, and I'm just going to heat it up. And you can see that my flower becomes shiny. Here's another thing that you can do. I've got all these little punched butterflies, and you could do this with die cut shapes or stickers or punch shapes, whatever. And I'm just pressing them into the ink color and then putting them on that little fork or handle over there. And then I heat it, and you can see the butterfly here becomes shiny with just a little bit of raised shine. It's quite nice. Here I am shaking on the powder, and then you can heat those all at once. I like to do a bunch at once so that I can save them for future cards. It really makes a big difference in bringing punched images alive. So you can watch as I heat here, and you see that bottom one and now the middle one and then the top one get the smooth, shiny surface on top. It's just a great way to change up your embellishments. So here's the finished card, and you can also see that white thanks that I did with white embossing powder. It really stands out on that colored paper. So that's something else you can do with it. And I just want to give a big thanks to Ranger, Hero Arts, and Tim Holtz for supporting this class. And if you want more information, go to 2peasinabucket.com on the education board. Thanks!